Hello, this is Mr. Barry, and today we're going to be talking about drawing with ink in plein air. In other words, drawing with ink outside and doing some sketches. And I wanted to start by showing you this piece that's part of the collection of the Nelson-Atkins. It's by the artist Alfred Thompson Britcher, and it has a lot of the hatch marks. I also like the composition. If you'll notice, looking at where the rule of thirds would be, where that horizon line and where he placed the mountains in the background. But he would utilize these sketches and he would take them back to his studio, and then he would do incredible paintings that would go along with them. Very similar. You notice how this looks very similar to the sketches that he had. I also wanted to show you a piece that I had done. This is a sketch that I did while on vacation in Yosemite. Specifically, I want you to look at how I handled the shading on the tree as well as the bark and the composition, very similar to what we saw before. But the main thing is the hatching. That would be the lines that are going up and down as well as sideways. What I'd like to do now is show you some different textures that you can create using an ink pen. And a lot of these textures are ones that I'm going to use in drawing. I'm going to start here with my Papermate Flare, and this texture is simply just hatching marks and that are vertical, and on one side I've made them closer together, and since I've made them close together, that makes it darker. This is a really good bark texture. Down here, I am switching pens, and I'm going to use my Pilot Varsity. This is the pen that I use probably the most. This is a disposable fountain pen, and it is great. But I'm just coming in with this pen and kind of doing some cross-hatching like this, almost scumbling, where you're going all different directions and creating a texture that way. On the trees, when there's like lichens and different things that are on there besides the bark, I really like using this texture for that. Now, I also like to do grasses and different things, and this one I'm using this Micron. This Micron pen comes in sets. It has permanent ink in it. This happens to be gray. And in order to make grass, what you will do is do a vertical, lifting up and doing a vertical line coming up. We have this different ways. But you can see how that is created. And then I'm going to use my Lamy pen. This is a Lamy pen. I'm going to lift it up. Okay, it is also a fountain pen. The only thing about this fountain pen is it has blue ink in it. So you can see same thing I'm doing over here, except this time I am trying to draw tree-like. So I start out by drawing the outline, and then I come in and doing my hatch marks on the side to create the shadows to get that in there. My final pen is a Xingzhou, and it's a Xingzhou 750, and this is my newest pen that I just got, and I absolutely love it. Actually, it's so reasonably priced. It's running around only about $8 for this. That I can use it every day. I don't fear if I'm going to lose it or something that it's something I'm going to be, can't replace very easily. So what I've done here is I've made some textures that kind of look like scales on something. Same thing, the closer that I do them, if I overlap, and the closer that I am, the more shading, the more shadow that's going to create. So that's your key. It's almost like you're building up that darkness, as you can see that. So you can kind of see where that's darker into this area. This is the same pen I wanted to show you. This is a cross hatching that I was doing earlier. And this pen does a nice job of it as well. But I use this texture, and this texture, as well as this texture the most. Now, the last pen I want to show you is completely different. It's called a brush pen, and I've used it in this square right here. And with the brush pen, it's just like using a paintbrush. There's ink in there. So it takes some getting used to if you're going to draw with this. As you are drawing, that thin line, and you can push down to get a nice thick line. You can use these for calligraphy a lot, which is nice. And I also like them if I've got an area that I'm going to fill in. Let's say if this section here, I want to fill that in, I can take my pen and just pretty quickly just brush back and forth and fill that area so that it's black ink.
So here we are at the lake, and I found a nice spot to sit down and where I could see this wonderful tree and the lake and some of the hills in the distance. And I thought I would get started by just taking my pencil, and I've got an H pencil because I don't want this to be very dark, and I'm going to go ahead and draw my lines and divide up my space like I'm doing the rule of thirds. And you don't want this to be very dark because you're going to be probably erasing it later. Usually when you use ink, however, it doesn't show up very much. In fact, I'm going to do a lot of sketching first with my pencil just to kind of get an idea of what I've got. I'm right in front of this incredible tree. It's about right here in the picture plane. I'm going to go all the way up. It has a little bit of a curve at the top. And then I want to show this really, really nice branch that's coming across this way and then up. And right now I'm not as interested in showing any detail as I am in just kind of getting the shape of the branches and the trees, just so I can get an idea of how my composition is going to go. So this is going to be that main branch coming across, and it's cut off right there. Leans in a little bit. On the other side, I didn't have it leaning quite as much, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that a little bit. And then coming across right here, having this be my horizon, because I want to emphasize the sky, emphasize that branch coming down. Right there is going to be where I'm going to place that landscape back here in the background, those hills of trees with the water in front of it. So I'll put that in there for like that. Yeah. I've already outlined my tree coming down, and what I'm going to do is just outline the main part of what I'm doing here. Now I'm also making sure that I don't add too many details as I'm going along. And I drew that tree in right there, but I think I'm, as artist prerogative, and I have the right to do this, I'm going to not put it in there because I think it's in the way. I would much rather focus on just this tree and come in and put the hills and the water and that kind of stuff down here, and just have this tree be the main part. I may come in and put a smaller bush over here on this side, move this bush over. In fact, I think I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to erase all of this in through here. Now, since I did that lightly, I can do that. And again, once you work with your ink, it'll show up much better anyway. Okay, now I'm going to come in and do the bottom part. The bottom part is smoother. So, and I'm right at that third. So this becomes my lower horizon. You either want your horizon to be down on this part, this lower part, or you want it to be up here. And again, I just have to emphasize that rules were made to be broken. So I'm looking at that cove goes in a little bit. So there's one there. I'm getting close to where my point of interest is. Showing some distance here. It comes across, and then it goes back in. Comes back out a little bit. Having my point of interest being that cove right there. And I had to be careful because I was using my finger. And as we talked about earlier, you want to be careful about rubbing your hand over the top of where you got the ink. Now down in this area, I'm going to go ahead and come up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of the ground to give the shoreline. I think I'm going to start working on some of the textures on my tree. And I'm looking at the light. It's a little cloudy today, but I'm looking at the light and the shadows. And looks to me like the light is coming from this direction again. We did have a sparkle on there it is, a little bit of sparkle on the lake earlier. But I'm still thinking that the sun is coming from this direction, so I want this side of the tree to be the darkest. Now I'm going to start drawing some lines that look more bark-like, that are kind of going in and out and waving up and down and doing some different things. So I'll work on this main branch. You can kind of see now there's also some little lichens in there, some little growth of stuff. So kind of put some of that in. It'll be a different mark than what I have doing with the smooth lines. But it's up there at the top. It creates a really nice texture there. Emphasize this darkness again. I'm just going to go over it again with my ink. But you can see how that line just disappears after you start putting in some texture. And you can really see how that is really starting to look three-dimensional. So just like in a painting, you're going to have several different values on that one branch. Now, also right here, I'm coming up, there is a little branch coming this way. I'm going to go ahead and add it in there on across. So a little bit of a leaf on the outside. Not quite as many leaves that have popped out on some of these trees, and this is one of them. It has more growth down towards the bottom, like where there's vines and things that are on it. So I'll probably have to simplify those vines because I don't want to get carried away with what they look like and having to draw all the texture. Sometimes you do too much detail, it just takes away from your drawing. Lots of geese on this lake, so you can probably hear. So I've done some work on the tree, and you'll notice that I continued adding the shading along the edges here and then the texture. But one thing I want you to notice is that I felt that the leaves on the tree were important to put in there, so I didn't put as much texture behind them, because if I did, that would wipe out all of this wonderful texture and detail that I have in here. You've got to be careful about using different contrasts. So I thought that the contrast of the leaves up against this white were more important than me coming in and adding a whole bunch of more texture on the tree. That is down here in the branches where I added it. Now, I want to go ahead and show you what to do in the background. And I started a little bit right here. And again, this is just one technique. There's lots of different techniques that you can use out there. What I like to do is I like to use hatching. And to show the detail in the background, where there's not much detail actually, I just come down with a line like this and just give the impression that there's something there. I'm not really putting very much more than I might add a few more lines in there, but the idea is to just give the impression that there's something there, because that is not the most important part. That is in the background. Okay, now, however, up here in the front where there is water, however, I do want to make this give the illusion of water. So I'm going to do the same thing, only a little bit horizontal, like this. And I also want to kind of darken where that shoreline would be. Just a little bit more. I'll probably come in and add a few more lines because I'm seeing some spaces in there that I don't particularly like, but and down here where there is the shoreline, I'm going to come in and add some grasses being vertical. I'm looking down there and seeing that there's also some like little tiny bushes. I'm going to add just a few of those in, just to add interest in through that area. Not trying to do very much. I don't want to take away from my center of interest, which is right there, but I want to do enough texturing in through here that it gives this the illusion that there is a shoreline there. So a little bit of a bush in through here, not too much. So I'm adding some texture to it, but I'm not going to put so much in it that it takes away from my trees. I think in a couple spots and through here like this there's actually a group of trees kind of right in through there. There's a few clouds back here. I might come in and just add a few lines up in the air where there's some clouds. Now these clouds, as I'm looking at them, they're not too prominent, so I'm putting very, very light lines to make it look like there's clouds, just again to enrich that background some.